Welcome back to Without Shortcuts. Today we are making meatloaf.
Meatloaf is super versatile. You can do just about anything with it, and that's why we picked it for today's recipe. We really want to show that you can just kind of grab things out of the refrigerator, throw things together, and really make a meal that's worth taking the time to put together yourself.
Definitely. Now, this actually is something that I've never made before, so we're going to kind of see how this goes, but this will show you just how easy this is to put together. When you're making a meatloaf, obviously kind of the star of the show is the meat. Today we're using ground beef. Because you're showcasing the ground beef, you really do want to use a good quality meat, and in this case you want to use an 80-20, so it's 80% lean, 20% fat, because as everybody knows, thanks to our friend Sam the cooking guy, fat is flavor.
You could definitely do this recipe. I do it often with ground turkey and it works great, but ground turkey is a lot leaner. Right. So you lose out on that. So you do have to adjust, a little bit more seasoning. You have to add a few more sauces, things like that. Easy adjustments. Hit us in the comments if you want some suggestions on how to do that and make it really come out nice.
And that's actually one of the really great things about meatloaf is, starting with just the basics of the meat, there's a whole bunch of different directions that you can go to put this together. Lots of different things that you can add to it. To get started with ours, we're just going to put in probably about a half an onion because we're using a pound of beef today, and then we're going to throw in some vegetables and some other spices and things that we'll get to as we kind of go along.
So like Brian mentioned, we're just using a pound of ground beef for this. We don't need 85 pounds of meatloaf. We're not trying to feed a big family or anything tonight. But this is really easy to scale up. Like you said, this is versatile. You can just kind of throw the things in. But if you're really trying to follow what we're doing, if you use a 2-pound block of ground beef, then you can put it in a loaf pan. It fills it up nicely. Comes out about right. If you do that, just kind of double up what we're doing here. But this is so easy. A lot of this is just kind of adding things in that you think you want added into your meatloaf. It's not a precision recipe necessarily. The other thing about meatloaf is being as versatile as it is great, but you also want to have kind of an idea or a theme of where you're going with this. So before you get started, you want to do two things. One, this is really quick and easy, so preheat your oven. For this, we're going to set it to 375. It's not going to take very long, and it's going to go right in, so just do it right at the beginning, and it'll be ready to go when you are. And two, pick which direction you're going with your meat. You going sweet, you going savory, you going Asian, you going barbecue. Anything you can do, not a problem. But pick it at the beginning so that you don't throw them all into one pot and have just no real identity to it when you finish. For ours, we're going to go a little more savory, a little towards the spicy side.
Right, so the first thing that we're going to add in is we've got half an onion diced up. So that's just going to go straight into the meat. We don't need to saute it first, nothing like that. It's just going straight in.
And you certainly can saute it. Sometimes if I'm getting fancy, I'll cook up a few strips of bacon. I'll take that bacon grease and saute the onions down in that. Add that all in. I mean, it's all depth of flavor, but we're trying to go easy, simple, as quickly as we can for this meatloaf.
Absolutely. And then the other thing that we're going to do, Doug had some vegetables in his freezer that have been sitting there for a bit, need to get rid of them, and meatloaf's a great place to put stuff like that. So we're going to go with a pound of meat, probably about a cup each of these. We've got some peas and carrots, and then also some frozen corn.
He's going to get those. We know we want some of that tomato sweetness in it. We don't want to add ketchup because we don't want the texture to get too loose. So we're just going to add maybe a tablespoon or so of tomato paste right on top of this as well.
And then the other thing that we're going to add into this is just an egg, and that just kind of helps as a binder, just kind of helps stick everything together.
The other binder we're going to use is breadcrumbs. Now you don't want to add the breadcrumbs until you get all the other things that you're going to put into this mixed into it, because you'll want to use the breadcrumbs to kind of adjust that moisture and make sure that it gets to the consistency you want.
Now that we've got all of the kind of wet ingredients, we're going to go ahead and just mix this all together.
Obviously, you could use a spoon for this, and it works just fine. But honestly, being able to just push everything together and kind of feel exactly what consistency you're at works a little better. So this is just easy. His hands are clean. I watched him wash them.
All right, that's a pretty good start on that. So then the next thing that's going to go in is kind of the dry ingredients, and that's where you're going to start pulling together your spices.
When it comes time to start adding your spices, like I said, this is versatile. Let's use what we have. When I do this, especially if I'm running through it quickly, some of these pre-mixed seasonings, you know, you accumulate them from all kinds of different places. I like to use those because this is a good place. You know, you're going to incorporate a lot of different flavors. It's going to be really quick and easy. So that works as good as anything. But keep in mind what you set as your flavor profile before you started. In this case, this rub is not particularly sweet. It's a little bit on the smoky side, so it adds a good hint of that with some garlic and some heat. So we're going to go ahead and use that, but just kind of figure out in advance and then add your spices accordingly.
Right, so we'll start with this guy. Throw some of that in there, and then we know we always need salt. A few grains of black pepper, and then because it makes everything better, garlic.
And if you took the time to saute your onions before you put them in there, you could always add fresh garlic there and cook it together and add it. Real nice touch.
Right, okay.
So looking at this mixture, hold up just a little chunk of that so you can kind of get a... You can see how it's holding together fairly well. There's not a ton of extra moisture in it. So we're not going to need a lot of breadcrumbs, but we'll add just a few, suck up some of that moisture, hold things together, and give it a little texture. If you were adding like Yoshida's Japanese soy sauce to this, or Worcestershire, or some kind of sauce like that to add moisture, then you'd probably need more breadcrumbs to kind of hold that together and absorb it. But for this, we'll probably be just about right.
All right, so we'll go ahead and mix this together, and then we should be ready for shaping and putting in the oven, right?
Yep, that should be right. I'll grab the pans and we'll get this thing ready. So we're kind of calling an audible on this. Originally, we were just going to do this free form, put it on the baking sheet and put it in the oven. We've got a pretty fair amount of vegetables in this. You may not need quite that many, but it'll still taste good. It'll give it a nice texture. We're going to go ahead and load it into the loaf pan. We've just put a little bit of nonstick spray on there, and then we'll throw it in the oven. Into the oven, we'll let that start baking, and we'll put a topping on it.
Now that we've got the meatloaf in the oven and it's started baking, the next thing that we need to put together is the topping.
For the topping, again, just kind of freeform, whatever you want to do, as long as you know that your flavors are going to go together. So we're going to stay in that kind of spicy, savory realm. We're going to make enough that we can put a little bit on when it's about halfway through baking. We'll cover the top, and then we'll save the last half of it, and we'll put it on just before we take it out of the oven. Simple enough. We are going to start with just a ketchup base. 3/4 of a cup, half a cup.
Ish.
Yep. We're just going to add some ketchup, a little garlic powder. You want to add some form of concentrated sugar because you want it to caramelize on the top of the meatloaf, give you a nice texture. So for that, I've got some habanero honey that you guys may remember. Brett from next door, he's done a couple taste tests for us. He actually makes this. It's got garlic and habanero mash in it, and it'll be really nice. It'll add a lot of heat to it as well. So I'm going to put a good little shot of that in there. And then to add just a little bit of the umami flavors to it. Again, it's kind of a Brett meatloaf here. I'm going to add some spicy soy sauce to it. You don't want to add too much of that because you don't want too much of the soy sauce flavor. But that heat and just that umami on the tongue will be a nice touch. And then finally, just to make sure it's hot enough and to make sure Brett's well represented, I'm going to use a little bit of OR hot sauce, and this one is just a cherry pineapple, but any kind of hot sauce, add a little bit of flavor and a little bit more heat. A little dash of that. And then with the topping, like this hasn't touched any raw meat. This is just fine. So taste it. Make sure it tastes good before you put it on top. Definitely need some salt and pepper. A couple twists of pepper. A little sprinkle of salt. Maybe just a touch more garlic. If you're doing something like a barbecue style meatloaf or something a little bit more on the sweeter side, instead of adding honey, you could certainly add brown sugar as well. Maybe a little regular sugar. Just whatever tastes good. That'll work.
All right.
So we'll wait until the meatloaf is just about halfway done, maybe cooked for 15 to 20 minutes. It'll start to get juicy. You'll be able to see it, and then we'll put about half of this on the top of it.
Our meatloaf is about halfway through the cooking process, so we're going to go ahead and put the first part of the topping onto it. So we'll just spoon some of this right on the top and just spread it around. All right. And then we'll just let that continue baking for another 15 to 20 minutes. Our meatloaf is just about done, so we're gonna go ahead and put one more quick little dollop of sauce on here. We'll let that sit in the oven for just a couple of minutes, just to bring the sauce up to temperature and caramelize just a little bit. And then we will take this out and give this a taste.
Our meatloaf is out of the oven. Everything's come up to temperature. We got just a little bit of crust on the top from that sauce. So we're going to go ahead and serve a little piece of this up and see what we've got. That's hot, but go ahead and give it a shot.
Right. That is a tasty meatloaf. I will be the first to admit that I'm not the world's biggest fan of meatloaf, which consequently is why I've never made meatloaf before. But honestly, I mean, having never made it before, super impressed with how easy it is, and just knowing the versatility of this, all the different ways that this could go. Like, this is a great recipe.
Thank you. It is. I mean, this is filling. It's hearty. It's nutritious. You pair this with some mashed potatoes or a baked potato, and you got your vegetables, you got your meat, you got your starch.
Right.
Even better, come tomorrow, this whole thing's cold, sitting in the fridge. You cut some pieces off, meatloaf sandwich. Boom!
There you go.
Yahtzee!
So, you know what? Give this a shot. Let us know on social media or down in the comments what you put in your meatloaf. Let us know what kind of direction that you guys go, and maybe we'll try it out. I mean, we always love hearing about that kind of stuff. Like I said, hit us up on social media. Check our Instagram, our TikTok, X or Twitter or whatever that ends up being in the future. But yeah, you know what? Let us know what you're doing.
Until you do, keep skipping the shortcuts. Let's make something delicious. We'll see you guys again.
All right. Thanks, guys.